This episode of the Deep Thinkers podcast is brought to you by Element Stoneworks. Element Stoneworks is a marble and granite countertop company. So if you have some surfaces in your home, whether it's counters in your kitchen or in your bathroom, or if you have a little desk nook that you want some granite on, you want to make it look nice and sleek, nice and posh, this is the company for you. They're on Facebook as well as Instagram. You can reach them at 602-930-8740 or at 480-290-1879. Now, Element Stoneworks does all their own installs and all their own fabricating. So sometimes it's better just to send a text message to these guys, but feel free to try to give them a call anyway. Reach out to both of them. They are insured, and you can find them on Facebook as well as Instagram. Mention the Deep Thinkers podcast, and you will get $50 off your install. This episode of the Deep Thinkers podcast is brought to you by Crandall Pest Control. Crandall Pest Control is a family-owned and operated business that was started in 2002. They do scorpions, termites, and general pest control. Mostly that's their bread and butter. But with them being in business for as long as they have been, they branch out into all kinds of pest removal. So give them a call at 480-360-4999, or you can check them out online at crandallpest.com. They're also on Facebook as well as Instagram. If you mention the Deep Thinkers podcast, you'll get $30 off your initial general pest control treatment. So check them out online at crandallpest.com or give them a call at 480-360-4999. Thank you. This episode of the Deep Thinkers podcast is brought to you by BrightIslandOutreach.org. Bright Island Outreach is a group of dental professionals that network with dental students both in the United States and in the Dominican Republic. And they go down to the DR multiple times a year, and they go into the impoverished communities with mobile dental units. And they provide education, teaching people about how to brush and floss their teeth and how to do it after meals and to avoid sugar and things like that. They also do extractions and fillings, root canals, and cosmetic. So anything that you would need to have a good, healthy set of teeth, they provide for these people who can't provide it for themselves. Now, there are several ways to contribute to the cause. You can go to brightislandoutreach.org, and you can buy a t-shirt. I wear mine all the time. It's good, soft cotton. The graphics are fresh. Everything looks good. I get compliments on my shirt all the time when I wear it, and I wear it a lot. So the second way is to just go to brightislandoutreach.org and donate some money. Everybody who runs this nonprofit also has a daytime job. So if you donate your money to Bright Island Outreach, you're not donating it to someone so they can drive a Porsche, the other days of the year when they're not out in the DR. Things like this go to supplies and, different things that they need to go down there. So all proceeds do go to the cause. The last way you can support Bright Island Outreach is to actually go to the Dominican Republic with them. Don't worry if you're not a dentist or a hygienist or anything like that. There's always something for somebody to do. They will always gladly accept the help. So, brightislandoutreach.org. Check them out. Hello, Planet Earth. I am here today with wild game chef extraordinaire, hunter, and author of Pheasant Quail Cottontail, Mr. Hank Shaw. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, man. I'm up bright and early and ready to go. How are things up in Northern California?
Well, unlike pretty much, well, actually, it's probably like where you're at in Arizona. It's going to be warm and sunny and pretty still today. It's
Nice.
good gardening weather, and it's funny because the Super Bowl was yesterday,
Right.
and it where I live and probably where you live as well, the Super Bowl is always kind of the herald of spring. And I know like
Yeah,
90% of the people here listening to this are going to throw things at us, but like my almond trees are all blooming.
that's
Everything
awesome.
is it's funny because we were commenting on that yesterday. Like, yeah, we're doing yard work on Super Bowl Sunday. It's just bizarre.
I was out messing with my bell peppers and artichokes yesterday in my garden as well. So I mean, yeah, it's exactly what it is.
So
Uh
here's the freaky thing. I live, I don't know, about 900 miles north of you,
huh.
and I have, knock on wood, I have three chili peppers that have survived through the winter.
Nice. What kind of
And
pepper?
well, I don't know. It's definitely climate change, but yeah, that has never happened, and we've lived here for 14 years.
I was going to say that was all TLC right there on your part, but climate can't change could be playing a
For
factor also.
frost always wins.
Yeah, frost is killer. Especially we don't have much frost down here. A couple times a year, maybe we might have to go cover our garden, but nothing like you guys have to deal with. This year we haven't had to cover it at all. Um,
Wow.
so there was one night it got down in the 40s, but I mean here it's. I think our low for the season was like no, one night it got down in the 30s, but it was like 38. So um, the stuff I'm growing out here is pretty hardy for that, so it didn't need to be covered. But yeah, man, I'm big down here with peppers. My dad likes to eat them, so I grow habaneros, I grow serranos, all the hot stuff. He loves it. So
I have some similar ones. I've got some mostly Mexican chilies.
yeah, it's the good stuff. That's what I love to grow. I like Tabascos, so they're tiny little peppers and they're super hot. So
I know. I've grown them before. I like chile de arbol. That's one of my chilies that has survived.
okay, that's cool. Yeah, Tabascos are a delicate, delicate plant, like a jalapeno
They
plant.
are. I've actually visited the Avery Island Tabasco,
Oh, cool.
Mecca, and it is in southern Louisiana. And if they even get close to a frost, which can actually happen every now and again,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah.
their whole shebang is
Oh
rotten.
man, that's got to be so. I mean, that's got to put you. I can't imagine what what some of these agriculture-based businesses go through. Well, just with the weather, especially down in Louisiana where there's hurricanes. I mean, just if it's not one thing, it's another. Seems
I
like
know.
so. But yeah, man. So you were down in Arizona here recently.
I'm practically a resident now, actually. I think in the space of 365 days, I've hunted there 5 or 6 times. I can't. I'm losing
Nice.
track. I've been here so much.
Nice. I love that Arizona is getting some pub and some recognition for its hunting. We don't get a lot of love for that. And there's some good hunting down here for sure.
I mean, it's best mule deer hunting in the world on the
Oh yeah.
Kaibab.
Oh yeah. I got drawn to the Kaibab my first hunt. I
No
was
way.
I
For
was
a buck?
16 years old. Hunted 2 weeks straight. Didn't see a damn thing. Heartbroken, man. Heartbroken.
Randy Newberg just had that problem. Like
Yeah.
Randy got drawn for the strip too, and he was saying that they hunted hard for like a week, and
Yeah,
they saw
man.
like little forkies, but nothing.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. We saw a couple deer. They might have been spikes, but they looked like doe from where we were at, and they were far,
Wow,
you know.
crazy.
But this is a long time ago. This was like 1995.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, it was crazy. We covered a lot of ground. We went up into the high country in the Kaibab, then we went down to the low country. We were just like, where are they? We saw one area that was just, it was about maybe a week or two old, but the tracks in this area were just, it looked like thousands of deer.
Hmm.
So I mean, not maybe not thousands, but hundreds. It was one of those areas where the pines end and it's just clay in that area, and so the tracks when it's wet they sink really good and deep.
Hmm.
And then I,
Archaeologists like that stuff.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure they do, especially with this Arizona clay we have out here. But that was my first hunt, so I was a little disheartened. Um, my next hunt was the following year. I got drawn for elk in Area 5A outside of Flagstaff. I think it's 5A. And I got my elk opening morning, a nice big six by
Wow.
six. So I felt
Nice. That's a
like,
big elk too.
yeah, I felt like Apollo, you know, threw me a bone there that day. So, but yeah, it was a great elk. I had it above my bed all through high school. Now it's at my cousin's cabin. So, and there,
Sweet.
I was thinking about reclaiming it a year or two ago, and I was like, man, they got kids up there, and that's part of like the tradition of their cabin, and they've named the damn thing.
They
So
put a red nose on it for Christmas.
I don't know if they do or not, but they certainly hang hats on it, like a lot. So, which is it's fine. That's what I did when I was in high school. So, but what have you hunted here recently in Arizona?
Oh, pretty much everything. So let's see, a lot of Mearns quail down in the southeast corner.
For sure.
Antelope jackrabbits, regular jackrabbits, cottontail
Nice.
rabbits, Gambel's quail. We looked for scaled quail, but didn't find any. I got myself a coos deer, and then I
Nice.
went to Yuma for the dove opener.
Okay. Yeah, I've got some cousins that live in Yuma, so I've been out there a lot. So, but yeah, man, you covered the spectrum right there, man.
Yeah, I mean, people don't quite understand how the diversity of opportunity in Arizona is pretty profound. I mean, it
Yeah.
is, especially if you're a quail hunter, it's kind of mecca. And the even more dirty little secret, which you may not even know, is that it is squirrel mecca.
Really?
There are four squirrel species that are huntable in
Hmm.
Arizona, three of which are kind of relatively easy to get
Yeah,
if you look for them. And then there's this one that like lives in this one spot, and if you get one, it's like it's kind of like the king eider hunt for duck hunters.
that's
Which,
cool.
if you're not familiar with that,
No, I'm not.
the king eider hunt is the hunt that you do when you have every other duck species in North America except for that one, because it costs like 3 to 5 grand. And they
Sheesh.
basically fly you all the way out to like the end of the Aleutians. So if you've seen Deadliest Catch,
Yeah.
they're based out of Dutch Harbor, which is kind of the middle of the Aleutians. So
Okay.
they send you all the way to the end of the Aleutians in winter, and they say, "All right, boys, go shoot one." And they put you on rocks in the winter in the Aleutians, and it's miserable.
Oh, it's gotta be so
And
cold.
oh yeah, and the king eiders are so big. Um, they're hard to bring down. I mean, there's it's kind of epic. So I mean, it's one of those things
Okay.
that you really want to only do that hunt if you really want to do that hunt. And that's the deal with. I can't remember the name of the squirrel. I think it's like the Mexican something something squirrel.
Gotcha. Yeah, we have squirrels all over the place here in Arizona. Like you wouldn't think of like in the valley where the desert is, um, you wouldn't think of squirrels, but yeah, all the time. So you get like little hobby farms here, even in the city, and you get a couple acres with some space on it and not any buildings, and for sure you'll have squirrels running around in that.
Mm.
So, but yeah, you were down in Casa Grande. That is a funny little town, man. That's that's really started to come up down there since the Home Depot got put in. But
Yes. We just used that as a base camp because it
yeah,
seemed to have all the amenities, and it got us into Gamble's country pretty easily.
there you go. Yeah, I was trying to recommend good restaurants for you, and I'm like, Casa Grande. If you
I
go
know.
south to Tucson, there's Blake's Lotaburger. If you go
Well,
north,
we're with a guy named Ron Shara, and
uh,
Ron Shara has a TV show called The Flush. So
okay,
we were shooting his TV show.
all right.
I guess it'll be on the air later this year.
Oh, cool.
But he's from Minnesota, so I specifically picked Casa Grande because there's a Culver's there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Culver's for sure. Culver's only hit here like maybe 7 years ago or something like that.
And it's only because of the snowbirds.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the snow. It's crazy with the snowbirds. There are places in Arizona that if you can get a good restaurant established in the valley, you can go anywhere. Anywhere it's cold, because there's always going to be that traffic going back and forth where people will recognize that. So there's a little restaurant, like a family boutique fish and chip place called Pete's in Arizona that a buddy of mine, his family owns. His grandpa was Pete, and they Pete was killed. I don't know, maybe 35 years ago or 30 years ago. Maybe it wasn't even that long. It sounds like kind of a long time. Maybe I'm getting old, but yeah, they've kept it as a time capsule, exactly how he was when he was alive, and so they won't branch out. But like if they were to go to Minnesota or Wisconsin or any of those places where the snowbirds come hard.
Wisconsin, because if I don't know if you know them. I mean, if you say you know them, but if they ever think about it, go to Wisconsin first, because Wisconsin's a Catholic state.
Oh
and
yeah.
the tradition of Friday night fish fry is huge
Oh
in Wisconsin.
man.
I went to I'm a Badger, so I went to the University of
Okay,
Wisconsin.
cool. Yeah, I lived in Chicago for a few months when I was younger, installing alarms for a door-to-door program for the summer, and we worked a lot in like eastern Wisconsin. So we were in Racine a lot, and
Hmm.
different places through there. But yeah, crazy names of cities in that town, in that state. Like
McWanago,
Kenosha. I was like, what did who named these things?
Oconomowoc.
Yeah, they're all native names. It's like, oh, okay,
Hmm.
that
Yeah, they're
makes
all
sense.
Ojibwe names, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I worked at Pete's Fish and Chips, and during Lent it is slammed.
I
I
bet.
mean, oh god, and it's right by the Mormon temple, the one in Mesa, and so you also have the Mormon Easter pageant going on. So you get hit with one, and then bam, the next one's right there too. But yeah, you do a lot of fishing up north, don't you? Isn't that how
Oh
you got
yeah.
your start going?
Well, I mean, sort of. I mean, I've been a fisherman since before I could remember.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I mean, I've fished in I don't know how many states and caught I don't know how many species. I mean,
that's cool.
you could I don't have every species in North America, but I've got a lot of them.
Yeah, we have some fishing here. It's nothing like states like Idaho or California or Colorado, but we do the White Mountains. My family has a cabin up there, and there's some fishing up there, but it's just that's one place within the outdoors area that we really fall short in compared to other states is good
Well, you got
quality
the
fishing.
Apache trout.
Yeah, I mean there's some good stuff up there, but not like Colorado, man,
No.
or Idaho or California or Alaska. Like as far as the states in the West Coast, as far as fishing goes, we're down a little lower. But we definitely have a lot of hipster fishers out here. So, oh man, like girls out there in their bikini top and shorts fishing in a golf course. Like
Nice.
there's a lot of that going on, or just little town lakes and stuff. So, but it's a good time. So, tell me about your new book coming out. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So then this is my fourth book. It's Pheasant, Quail, Cottontail, and so it's basically the end point of the trilogy. So the first uh, specific cookbook I wrote my first ever book was a book called Hunt, Gather, Cook, and it's kind of a primer on all things wild.
Okay.
And so that it has a whole section on foraging, a whole section on fishing, and a whole section on hunting. But
Nice.
it's more of a thing to whet your appetite and to get a little bit of insight into these other aspects of being in the outdoors.
Okay.
So that came out in 2011, and then in 2013 I wrote a waterfowl cookbook called Duck Duck Goose. And the reason I started with
I
a
think I've heard
waterfowl
of that one.
cookbook, well, everybody
That's
in
right.
Minnesota wants, everyone in Minnesota is like, it should be Duck Duck Gray Duck.
There you go.
But but the reason I started with waterfowl is because I live in Northern California, and we're the home to 9 million wintering waterfowl within
Jeez.
about 2 hours of our house. So there's a very, very, very strong waterfowl hunting tradition in Northern California that not a lot of people know about.
Sounds like the waterfowl are the ones living in California. The rest of the people just kind of stay there.
Yeah, I mean there's been a lot of it's been a lot of habitat work by California waterfowl and other groups, and so yeah, I mean it's some of the best duck hunting in the United States, and not a lot of people know that. So that was the first one, and then the second one I had to do a big game book, right?
Right.
So I wrote a book called Buck Buck Moose.
Yes.
Which is about all basically all big game, except it doesn't really cover pigs, but it covers all the antelope and deer and elk and moose and that sort of thing. And that came out in 2016. And so this is the third one. This now we've got everything else. So it's
Yeah.
turkeys and quail and rabbits and pheasants and squirrels and grouse. And it basically, I think it's our best work yet. I mean, it's 336 pages, so it's bigger than
Nice.
any other book that we've written. It's got twice as many photographs. It's got more recipes, more species. And the coolest thing I think about this new book is that, from a cook's perspective, if I make, say, pheasant white chili, for example, there isn't any reason that you couldn't do that with a cottontail rabbit or a squirrel or a
Right.
partridge or a quail. Any other, very similar white meats will absolutely work in that same recipe. So what I did was I still do have chapters based loosely on a group of animals. So the pheasant chapter covers all the white meat grouse as well as pheasants.
Cool.
So that has a symbol. It's got a rooster pheasant as an icon. And so, but whenever else in that whole book that you could use one of these animals in a recipe, just look for the icon.
That's
So
tight.
you could find, like, I have buffalo turkey mac and cheese, which is among the more lowbrow dishes in the book, but it's really tasty.
That's awesome.
It's super tasty, but I mean, it's not exactly picky in the air food, but that can be used with almost anything. And then
Right.
I've got other things like there are some dishes like a chili or whatever or a gumbo where every single icon's in there, including like possums. Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, for sure.
these are something in a gumbo, you can use anything.
Yeah.
And so the other piece to this book that I haven't done before is that I'm in partnership with Quail Forever and Pheasants Forever. Quail Forever is actually involved heavily in Arizona. A portion of the proceeds of not only every book sold, but we're doing customizable T-shirts on Teespring. So you can get a special pheasant quail cottontail T-shirt with like a rabbit on it, or a
Cool.
pheasant on it, or a quail, or I actually, for as a hat tip to Arizona, I've got one of the white-winged dove on it.
I'm gonna have to get one
And
of those.
yeah, and it's like you can get different colors and sizes, and there's men's and women's, and so the proceeds from that go to the proceeds of the shirts go to Habitat.
That's
And a
awesome.
portion of the proceeds of the book go to Habitat. So I'm giving back as best I can,
That's so cool.
um, and
Yeah.
it's I think just it's I'm happy to be able to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what people don't realize is how closely hunting and conservation mirror each other. In fact, there's a very, very strong argument that conservation is a byproduct of hunting. And anti-hunters' heads explode when they hear that. But there's really no other groups of individuals or made up of individuals that are donating large sums of money to conservation, whether it be through buying tags or any other way or any other means. So it's a very strong argument. That warms my heart right there to know that you're giving back that way. That's super super awesome and so important. It's a very that's a very selfless thing you're doing there for all your hard work you put into these books. Because writing books isn't easy. You know,
No.
getting a single book to publishing it is so hard. Like I work for a I'm not well, my office isn't a publisher's office, and so I know a little bit about publishing. He publishes educational materials, so nothing I would write would get published by him. But anytime I write something, he goes through it and edits for me. And man, anytime someone who can get a book, published, much less four, like that's a lot of hard work. And to take a portion of that and donate back is something that's super awesome. Anybody who's thinking about buying this book should, just for that reason, and they should get a T-shirt as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, these recipes that you break down in these books, I remember being in high school and getting my first elk and looking at it and thinking, somebody out there is making enchiladas out of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody out there is making meatloaf out of this. Like, wouldn't it be cool to have a recipe? And, this is pre mainstream use of the internet, so that's about as far as that thought went. When I heard about you, Um, I reached out to you online, and you told me about your Facebook group, Hunt, Gather, Cook.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, and then let's talk more about recipes. I skip all over
Sure.
the place, but Hunt, Gather, Cook to me is so cool. If you're into hunting or just nature of any kind, like even if you're into hiking, and you're not like a hunter or a forager per se, like this is such a cool group to follow because you learn about what's edible and what's not out in call how many people are in that group now across the
Just shy of 12,000.
Sheesh, that's a good sized group. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So the thing about the Hunt Gather group, Hunt Gather Cook group, it's a closed group on Facebook.
Hmm.
So you have to request entry into the group, and chances are it's going to be me saying yay or nay. And so there's a couple of questions that I ask, like, are you a forager, a hunter, an angler, or all three? I kind of like to know generally where people come from, so I ask like a state or a province.
Right.
I don't want your address. I just state's fine.
Yeah.
And then I asked if if you read Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook, which is that's the website that is the core of everything that I do. I've run this website Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook for 10 years now, and it's the largest source of wild food recipes on the internet. And it's got
Hunter, angler, gardener, cook.
yep.
I'm
So you
not
can get to it
familiar with
from
that one.
that's really funny.
Yeah.
That's because from my perspective, it is the core of everything. And so, and in this modern world that we live in, there's so many people who know me through a Facebook group or Instagram, or they bought a book or whatever, and they have no idea about this website, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
wow.
so you can get to it from huntgathercook.com, and it is like basically if you're right now, I don't have any books about fish or foraging, and it's got all of my recipes for all kinds of fish and all kinds of foraging.
Nice.
It's got tons of recipes for venison and quail and whatever. I mean, you name it. There's well over 1,000 recipes on the website,
Okay.
and I update it twice a week when I can, and then I run a newsletter once a month. So I mean, I'm sure everybody here listening is like, yeah, I don't know about newsletter because I don't want to get pounded. Like I'm going to call out Northern Brewer because I'm a home brewer. Northern Brewer bothers the heck out of me because I love their products, but they are relentless in their email.
Same with Sweetwater for like recording equipment.
Relentless. And I'm like, you guys just need to shut up and just, I'm going to buy something from you. You just need to chill. So I take that in mind with my newsletter, and I publish once a month.
Yeah.
And it's an actual newsletter I'm writing to you. It's not just a roundup of posts. It's not just advertising. So
Yeah, I don't mind newsletters as long as they're like legit, 12
yeah,
newsletters a year is not excessive. Um, Man, I had to call Sweetwater and be like, dude, listen, take that email. I gave you the wrong email. you know, put this one on there, you know. Just cause, and I get it, like, they're trying to get their name out there. But honestly, man, like, how effective is mass email marketing these days?
apparently it is, but I think what happens is you end up annoying a large swath. You have a sort of a quietly annoyed swath of customer base,
Yeah.
and so I don't want that.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Hunt Gather Cook
Yeah.
forum on Facebook. So I started this thing, and like you have to get into it. Oh, by the way, if you are a listener of this podcast and you want in on the forum, just mention that you're a listener,
Awesome. Thank you.
and then that'll get you right in because then I know you're not like some Indonesian spammer or whatever.
Or some troll that's anti-hunting that just wants to swear at everybody for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we police things heavily. I mean, we have everything from vegan hippie earth mothers on this forum to to the people who are to the right of Attila the Hun, and the overarching rule of our forum is that we're only talking about wild foods.
Right.
Keep it on the food, keep it on the food, keep it on the
Yeah.
food,
And
and
respect.
it's been one of my goals ever since I started doing this. Is because I mean, let's face it, we live in an extraordinarily divided world right now,
Mhm.
and I view it as a point of pride that whenever I do an event, and I'll be doing 78 of them in the United States and Canada this year,
Gee.
that you will have people from all over the ideological spectrum come to the event and often sit down right next to each other, and they'll have something to talk about that they can talk about. In
Yeah.
other words, in this case, hunting quail or hunting rabbits or whatever, and in other places it would be deer hunting, and to even be able to break bread, because a lot of these are food events, and just have that conversation and not devolve into divisiveness and nastiness. I mean,
Yeah.
I think everybody who has a platform should focus on this, because it's really, really dangerous in this society right now.
Yeah. There's enough dividing us now as it is. If we can focus on the things that bring us together, if you focus, you can find negativity in anything,
Mm-hmm.
but if you try to focus on positivity and what brings people together, even if it's difficult to find at first, that right there is what is going to save our species from the self-destructing path
Well,
we're on right now.
like we can all agree to hate the Patriots. Kidding.
Hey man, Tom Brady has it rough, man. He only had to go home and cry about only having 5 Super Bowl rings, and I'm sure sleeping next to Giselle was real tough that night because he was crying so much because no, yeah, Tom
I'm a
Brady's got a
huge,
good life.
I'm a huge New York Giants fan.
Okay.
So this Super Bowl was one of the worst I've had to sit through in
Oh
40
man, but
years, but I
how was
watched
that?
it.
How was that Eli Manning Odell Beckham Jr.
I
commercial?
kind of liked it because I like the fact that the Giants can laugh at themselves,
Yeah,
and this year they needed to.
yeah. I thought it was hilarious. Anytime someone's a real good sport like that, it cracks me up. Like when Peyton Manning had those commercials where he would go to other people's jobs and cheer them on.
Oh, that was really good.
And like he wants the Subway shirt because like it's like a game worn jersey. He's like, yes, it's the Subway apron. He's like, yes, like he was the best at that. But anytime someone's a good sport like that, I think it's great. I'm a
I
Cardinals
used,
fan myself, um, diehard AZ, so we don't mind losing. We're cool with that over here. It doesn't phase us at all.
yeah, I mean, well, but you guys have you'll be in a rebuilding year this coming year, but
Yeah,
the Cardinals have been quite good for a long time. I mean, they just haven't been Super Bowl.
the problem is we have O-line issues, and that's the big elephant in the room. Is we dial
Well, now you need a
everything in.
quarterback and a coach.
Yeah, I think we got a coach. I think we got
I
the
think you did.
Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator, I think.
Okay.
So there was talk about us getting one of the quarterbacks from Minnesota and a coach from there. Obviously, the coach didn't happen, but I would love to see Teddy Bridgewater wearing red. I think that would be awesome.
Oh, it makes sense. He played for the Cardinals,
Did he?
the Louisville Cardinals.
Oh, got me. Yeah, I was like, what? How did that one slip through the cracks? So, but yeah, okay, yeah, once a Cardinal, always a Cardinal, right?
There you go.
So
I
there you
actually
go.
saw a cardinal when I was quail hunting. I didn't realize that you had actual cardinals in Arizona, but you do.
Yeah, we do. It's kind of crazy because you don't think of cardinals in the desert. But yeah, we have some in the desert. Also, we have a lot of them in the White Mountains and in the other little forests we have up here. So
That is one of the cool things about Arizona, is that I learned this from mushroom hunting in Arizona as well. There are a number of eastern oriented species like the cardinal and like certain sets of mushrooms that will extend into Arizona, but they kind of slip underneath. They don't make it across the Rockies, they don't make it to California, they don't make it to Nevada, but they kind of slip under into Arizona, and that's where they stop. So there's
wow.
this, it's kind of an interesting mishmash. Well, I mean, if you think about it, scaled quails were really kind of a West Texas thing,
Okay,
and a
so
New Mexico thing, but they reach into Arizona.
we are a snowbird destination for man and beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, our coyote situation we got out here is crazy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you'll go into neighborhoods in the valley here, and you'll see them just hanging out. You know,
Well, you can
just like
you can
wow.
pretty much see that anywhere in the country now. I mean, my
Yeah,
mom lives in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and they've got coy wolves there just hanging out.
yeah, they've reached up that far. Listening to Dan Flores and Steve Ranella talk about the North American coyote on Steve Ranella's podcast was fascinating. Like I'd go to a party and like let me tell you guys all about coyotes. All right, I know, you know.
Because of that book.
Oh, well, they wrote a book, but they have a podcast where they just talk about it and they rap about it for maybe 30 minutes. And
Okay.
yeah, those guys are just so knowledgeable, and stuff like that. Um, I love this new, I don't know if it's a new breed or if it's just with social media. Hunters like this, hunter spokesmen for hunting, like Steve Ranella or Cameron Haynes. They just come out and they're articulate, they're intelligent, very knowledgeable about biology and the outdoors, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air for the hunting scene, and then you've got these young women like Evie Shockey and Sabrina Cortigelli, who are women out there, beautiful women, just hunting it up, getting it done. This new view on hunting, I think, is just awesome, and I think it's going to change the way people look at hunting in time. So how do you feel about that? Is that something you've noticed at all? I mean, you're a little closer to
Well,
things, so.
it's sort of what's old is new again. The prototype for all of that is Aldo Leopold, and the author of Sand County Almanac, but all sorts of. Aldo wrote a very, very important biological paper back in the 40s, I think, about the life, all about the Mearns quail in Arizona.
Okay.
So you have these biologist hunters going all the way back. I mean, it exists all the way back to Audubon. And because how do you think Audubon got all this stuff? Well, he shot it.
Right.
Hey, that's a new bird. Blam. Oh yeah, it is a new bird.
It's coming right for us.
Yeah, it's coming right for us.
It's coming.
I used to wear round glasses, so I used to go as that guy for Halloween all the time.
Oh, that's
in
awesome.
South Park.
I love South Park, man. I got in a big Twitter argument with David Avocado Wolf on Twitter, and I kept on tagging South Park, and I was like, David, the only platform important enough to get your message out to the world is South Park. They're the only ones that can do what you're saying that can do justice with your message. And I must have tagged them 40 times, and people were like liking it and reposting it.
Pretty
So
funny.
we can only hope that South Park comes out with a David Avocado Wolf episode sometime. I don't know what they're waiting for personally. So, but yeah, I digress.
You see a lot of that going back into time, and they've always existed. And so I think the answer is that this is this period of time where their voices can be louder and need to be louder. So
Right.
To some extent, it's cream rising to the top. And hunting as a pursuit is not getting much bigger, and the population is getting much bigger.
Right.
People will talk about hunter recruitment and retention and that sort of thing, and that is a serious issue. Like the whole industry, just there's much weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth after the last national survey that showed like 2 million hunters down. I happen to think that's a blip.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll pop back up again, but the overall trend is static, and it's just because there are a lot of reasons going into that. One, I think probably the single most important reason is that it's hard. And
Yeah.
if you talk to these are generalities, so take this with as generalities.
For sure.
Younger people, and I don't want to sound like an old man. I mean, I'm only 47, so
yeah, you're young still, for sure.
So younger people can often be interested in something like hunting, but if they're not successful at it the first or second or third time out, they're like, oh, that's too hard, I'm going to try something else. And that's not how you get to be a good hunter.
Right.
And I taught myself how to hunt ducks, and it was a hilariously tragic process that took over several seasons. But you just keep at it. You keep at it. You keep at it. Like there's so many people here listening to this podcast who really wanted to be good at something. You don't have a natural talent to be good at whatever that thing is, but you worked at it, and you eventually became more than competent because you saw this super talented individual at whatever it is that you're thinking of right now meh, I'm just not that interested, and just fade away. But persistence, it's the Pete Rose effect. You have to
Right.
be a certain age to remember Pete Rose, but Pete Rose is a ball
Well,
player.
at least remember him for what he was great at and not the
Right.
scandal. So,
Pete Rose is a ball player who was a middling height, middling build, not terribly fast, couldn't really hit for power, but Charlie Hustle was his nickname because he outworked every single other player in the major leagues and became. Yeah, I think he should be a Hall of Famer, but that's another
I do too.
discussion.
I agree with you there.
So it's hard, and so hard. Getting into hunting and to be successful at hunting requires persistence. It's an opaque pursuit as well, because if you don't grow up with a family of hunters or friends who hunt, then how do you even get started? And I spend a lot of time helping new people come into the pursuit, and so does my girlfriend Holly. And I think it's incumbent on every hunter out there to be receptive to newcomers to the pursuit, no matter what their age is.
Yeah.
So there's a recruitment issue, and then there's a retention issue as well. So I've started hunting, or I am hunting, and then my super great spot for deer becomes a subdivision, or my
Yeah.
great, or here in California, the amazing public waterfowl refuge system has gotten so overcrowded. Well, it hasn't actually gotten overcrowded, but it's gotten so difficult to get a spot in some of these places where I used to draw 5 to 10 reservations a year. Now I'm lucky to draw 2.
Jeez.
And so you have this opportunity and access issue that is very significant all over the country. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on in terms of hunter numbers, but in the greater society, what you hear, I mean, I hear a lot like, oh, well, 90% of people out there are anti-hunters. Well, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
90% of people out there are non-hunters,
Right.
neither pro nor con. And you're never going to convince the antis otherwise, unless you know one. Actually, I've been friends with several antis, and
I've flipped people on the topic of trophy hunting in Africa, but I don't think I've flipped people on the topic of general hunting.
you can, and it usually involves the table.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
87% of this is a general number, but in survey after survey, way north of 85% of regular Americans approve of hunting if you're hunting to eat whatever it is that you're hunting.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the way forward. And that's really where I
focus. That's one thing I love about guys like Steve Ranella is that guy will eat anything he puts a bullet through. I mean, it could be, like you hear him talking about eating coyotes or eating lions, and it's like, yeah, I mean, no one can argue with that. That guy does not hunt to put stuff on his wall. Stuff may end up on his wall, but that guy eats whatever he hunts. And I think.
Don't fool yourself.
Really?
And there is nobody shooting coyotes or cats of any kind just to eat them.
No, but he talks about on Joe Rogan's podcast and on his own podcast, he talks about eating coyote. He talks about eating lions.
That's a different thing. So this happened to us in Arizona.
Okay.
So Brian from Gritty Bowman.
All right.
He was with us just recently. So I was a guest of Randy Newberg and down in Arivaca, Arizona, and we were hunting there for a week. And Brian from Gritty Bowman put an arrow in a Coatimundi, which we decided to call Man Bear Pig.
Pig. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
It is the weirdest animal. It's like a cross between like a lemur and a possum and a raccoon, but its meat is very light and
we got some weird like that tails out here. We got some weird ones out here.
Mm-hmm. So they'll show this on camera, and they're like, "Hey Hank, you're gonna cook this?" And I'm like, "That's a whole lot of nope." And I'm just no.
It's good.
See, the difference between me and Steve Ranella is that I'm just not going to shoot a lion or a cow or a wolf or a coyote. I'm just not going to shoot them.
Right.
And it's because I don't really have any interest in cooking dogs or cats.
Gotcha.
But Brian was convinced. He was like, no, we're eating this thing because I shot it. I'm going to eat it, just like Steve does.
Right.
And so they were sort of making their they're talking about how they're going to cook this thing. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, just give it to me, because I didn't want to see him get
Amateurs, lay
hurt.
down before you hurt yourselves.
Exactly. I just, because it was just one of those deals where um, they could get hurt, right? Because if
Right.
they were just going to put it on the grill, who knows what the parasite load of this thing is?
Yeah.
And in general, omnivores, which a coatimundi is, and carnivores, which lions and cats and coyotes and wolves
Trigonose.
are, have huge parasite loads,
Yeah.
like monstrous parasite loads. And so so we simmered this. Well, we seared it in bacon fat, and then we simmered it for 5 hours, and
Sure.
in beer and chilies and tomatoes and garlic and stuff. And
Yeah.
then I made a barbecue sauce out of mesquite honey and local chili paste and a
Okay.
little bit of more bacon fat and a little bit of lime juice and
Sounds
salt.
awesome.
Oh, it was really awesome. And
Yeah.
then so this thing is all super tender, and I soaked it in the sauce for a little bit, and then I finished it grilled over pecan wood. And I'm not going to shoot a coatimundi, but it tasted fine.
Yeah.
It was like porky rabbit.
Okay. I guess if
So,
you put enough seasonings and sauce on anything, and cook it long enough, it'll.
but even the meat all by itself, if you got to the center of a hind leg or whatever, it wasn't off-putting.
Right.
But that's the thing. It's like the difference between. I'm not going to go out of my way to shoot coatimundis now because I've just cooked one. I mean, but
Right.
Brian might. But I don't know. I mean, there's a difference because I have only X amount of time to hunt in any given year, and
Yeah.
I'm just not going to waste that time pursuing an animal that is sketchy at the table.
Right. Right. Let me ask you about javelina. I've only heard of one good way to prepare javelina where this guy said he would boil it and some green foam would rise to the top. He'd clean the water out, boil it again, more green foam rising to the top, and he'd make chili out of it once it's all cooked. And he said he could eat javelina that way. That's
That's
kind of
absolute bullshit.
yeah,
Just
like
bullshit. It's just
okay,
total 100% bullshit.
how do you do? Because I've had javelina, and sometimes it's been good, and sometimes it's been a little rough. You know, what's
I've had lots of javelina.
yeah,
So here's the thing. So a javelina properly cleaned is just a pig.
okay,
Period. End of story. No debate.
okay,
If it's improperly cleaned, then it becomes what you call it, the skunk pig.
right,
Um, so javelinas are often shot in hot weather. You need to gut them in the field.
okay, like
Period.
right
End
away,
of story. I mean, unless you shoot one at a 40-degree morning, because the desert gets cold in the morning.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you got to gut it in the field, and as the boars are stinkier than the sows, so you're going to want to heavily season a boar, not because of the scent gland. So the scent gland's kind of a tramp stamp if you know where it is. It's like
right,
right at the base of the back, but it's in the skin.
okay,
So if you skin out a javelina like you would a pig, which is what I did, you never even see it.
okay,
It's not an issue. It's just not an issue. Just don't poke it, because it'll squirt out ick, right?
yeah,
And it just, leave it alone and throw it away and deal with the meat. And they're hairy, so you want to pick off all the hairs because the hairs have a little bit of that musk on them.
yeah,
And then it's just a pig, dude. I made pozole verde out of a whole javelina for Randy Newberg and his crew, and I think they thought that was the best dish of the entire weekend.
right
And
on,
I made javelina cochinita pibil, which is a kind of a Yucatecan dish. Javelina live in the Yucatan, um, and I made that in Texas, and they're like, oh my god, we're never gonna throw away javelina again. I mean, but it's not like I'm a wizard or anything. It wasn't like the
you just know what
coatimundi
to
where I had to
do.
use
Yeah,
special stuff. There's nothing zero wrong with a Javi. The
okay,
only thing that you're going to get into is if you do have a really old big boar hog, they're gonna have a lot of testosterone, just like a big regular
like a
pig.
big
And
regular
like,
pig. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, if you hunt regular pigs like I do, we don't. I mean, if I'm not in Texas, Texas, you just shoot them all.
right,
But if I'm not in Texas, like if I'm hunting in California, I'm gonna pass on a big old boar hog.
yeah. You can go for a sow or maybe one that's been caught and
Hmm.
neutered and released.
Well, that never happens in California. But
Right.
if it's a big old boar hog, I mean, I know what my nads smell like after 3 days. I'm not gonna eat that.
True, true, true. Man, have you seen that vampire movie? That's the comic, like the comedy. It's called Things We Do in the Shadows.
No.
It's the guy from Flight of the Conchords, the New Zealand comic, and he's talking about why vampires like virgins. And he goes, it just like if you were going to eat a sandwich, maybe you might enjoy it more if you knew that no one had fucked it first.
Oh God.
Like so, like when you said that right there, like that's what popped in my mind. I'm sorry, man. I'm a weird
Clearly,
guy.
this is not a G-rated
Oh no,
podcast.
no, no, no. Oh, this one, no, 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 no. Yeah, we let ourselves be ourselves on this podcast. So, but yeah,
Let's talk about recipes.
yeah, we've only got a couple minutes left, like maybe 10. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about some of your favorite recipes. Like when you really want to have a good meal and you've got whatever your freezer's full of a variety. What do you cook up for Hank and Holly?
Well, so it all depends. I mean, I've been doing this for many, many years, and I used to work in restaurants. So I think if you're going to talk about let's just talk about okay, so it's a Wednesday night. We've been working really hard. I don't have a ton of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quick thaw some duck or goose breasts with the skin on, like mallards or speckled belly geese. And the way you do that is you throw the vacuum sealed packet into a stock pot full of cold water. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but this is how you do it because it's food safe and it's very, very fast. And it'll thaw in 20 minutes.
Cool.
Then I'll take it out and I'll salt it well on both sides, and I'll put it on a cutting board and let it sit for at least a half an hour and maybe up to an hour. And it's exactly like letting a steak come to room temperature.
Okay.
And then I'll pat it dry, and I'll put some rendered duck fat. This is another benefit of living in a wintering ground for ducks is our ducks are very, very fat. So
Yeah.
we render out wild duck fat. So I'll put a spoonful of that in the pan, turn on the pan, and as soon as the fat melts, I'll lay those duck breasts skin side down. And I'll do that, and then I'll let them cook about 8 minutes, more or less, on the skin side. And then I'll cook them to medium rare. And then a lot of times, all I really want with it is really good fresh pepper and maybe a squeeze of a lemon from the lemon tree in the backyard. And that plus some rice and a salad, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, it doesn't always have to be fancy.
Yeah.
But that said, I mean, I like fancy food too. But I firmly believe, and this is a product of age. I didn't believe this 10, 15 years ago. The fancier you get with food, and this is to all the chefs out there, the fancier you get, the harder it is to be soulful. And people can taste soulful in food.
Okay.
I've had a lot of dishes that had interesting flavor combinations, but they didn't satisfy me like like a plate of pasta and homemade ragu.
Right.
They didn't satisfy me like, fried chicken and collards. And so it doesn't mean you can't do soulful food at the highest level. It means you really, really need to work on dishes and really have everything work right. And it has to work right in a way that a diner can eat in any combination at any order, because the worst thing you can do is instruct a diner on how to eat.
Right. Right. Man, while you're talking about this, the thought that's going through my head is, what are like Thanksgiving and Christmas like at your house? Like, do you get into the wild game there too, and do some really cool stuff there, or is it still pretty traditional?
Well, we don't really eat domestic meats at all. I mean, I haven't bought
Love it.
meat or fish for the kitchen. I've not bought meat or fish for the house more than a handful of times in oh boy, what is it? 13 years now.
That's awesome, man. That is
And
awesome.
I used to think that living this way was going to be difficult, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'll write a book about it. And then it got so damn easy that I don't even think. Like our freezer, it's right. The seasons are over now, so everything is
Yeah,
done. Both our freezers are
that's awesome.
packed. And so, I mean, I've got everything from snipe to elk in my freezer.
That's
And
awesome.
I mean, it can be a problem because if I want something in the bottom, but
Yeah.
Christmas and Thanksgiving, it depends. I rarely get to do a big spread
Mm.
because there's not a lot of family in the West Coast. So, but I'll do roast goose or a roast ham or something. The dishes are traditional, but often done with wild game. Like my stuffing
Awesome.
will have wild mushrooms in it, for example.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. That sounds so
Yeah,
cool. What kind of music you listen to these days, Hank?
pretty much everything except country.
Really?
Um, yeah, the only country I can tolerate is like Johnny Cash or Merle Haggard.
Yeah, I like the old stuff. I like outlaw country. No
I'm
Sturgill Simpson.
I don't even know who he is.
He got country album music of the country album of the year last year. He won the Grammy, but
Oh, then there's no reason I would ever want to know.
well, but he sounds a
Nope,
lot like
sorry,
Merle.
done.
He
Doesn't
sounds a
matter.
lot like old twangy Merle. Like I would check him
Sorry.
out. You might
Nope,
like him.
won't do it. Because it's not like I own Merle Haggard albums. Like I don't like if Merle Haggard's on the radio, I won't turn it off. That's about it.
Right.
Like you have to understand that I have an encyclopedic knowledge of hip hop music from 1980 to about 1994.
I love good West
So
Coast rap, man.
so old school hip hop is big always.
How do your hunting buddies like that? Who picks the channel when you guys are out there?
Whoever drives.
There you go.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah, end of story. Which is why I hear a lot of country music, which is apparently all about like your truck's breaking down, your girlfriend losing, your dog dying, and
Good hard
having a
life.
terrible job and cracking open a cold
Uh-huh.
beer.
Uh-huh.
But and yeah, it's like I don't have a visceral hatred of country. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I grew up in the shadow of New York City.
Okay.
So my first 18 years was an intensely urban experience.
Gotcha.
So I would have to. I mean, it doesn't mean I couldn't like country as an adult. I just never really got to it. Classic rock, lot of classic
Love
rock.
classic rock.
Because
Nice.
I have older sisters and brothers.
There you
So when I was a little kid, I was exposed to what was then called rock
go.
um,
Yeah.
at an early age. So those are probably the two biggest. I like actually Mexican music too. I listen to
There
a
you
lot
go.
of like Mexican rap
Brass
and bands
horns and stuff.
like no, not mariachi. Um, like Mexican rap or Mexican I don't know it's like Escala Ultra Latina. It's like just cool music that happens to be in Spanish. It's not
Ooh,
traditional.
that's cool. Right
Like
on.
Kinky or El Gran Silencio would be two bands like that.
Okay. I'll have to check him out. El Gran Silencio or Kinky. All right. Yeah, I love that Mexican well, I guess it's more like I love that Spanish song that's Domina Gasolina. That one's great, dude. That one
Yeah.
makes me want to dance.
Well, working in kitchens, all your prep music is either something in Spanish or Wu-Tang Clan, basically.
There you go. I love the Wu Tang though. Yeah. I actually just bought a jujitsu shirt that's got the Wu Tang symbol on it. It says "Protect your neck." So
That's hilarious.
yeah, it's great. But my nephew, I bought him a Wu Tang shirt. He's like this little redheaded kid, Irish as can be. Um, he's like 5 or maybe even 4, and I bought him this Wu Tang Clan shirt, and I posted on my Instagram. It's awesome. But yeah, Wu Tang is for the children. So hey, Hank, thank you for coming on the Deep Thinkers podcast. It has been great interviewing you. I've wanted to do this for a while. We actually started talking a couple years ago, and I reached out to you, and I was like, "Hey, man, I can I follow you?" You told me about Hunt, Gather, Cook. I'm like, I heard your name on the Joe Rogan Experience, and you were like, "Who's Joe Rogan?" I'm like, "Well, he's a comic. He's a host of Fear Factor, UFC commentator, and he's recently a hunter. And he goes out with Steve Ranella, Cameron Haynes, and those guys. And you were like, that's probably how he.
Cam Haines is a sweaty guy with the abs, right?
Dude, he's like a bodybuilder that hunts and runs ultra marathons for.
I always see him like that full draw with like sweaty abs. I
Yeah,
guess the guy's a serious athlete.
yeah, he'll do ultra marathons. He works out a lot. He's kind of like the alpha male of the like he's a man's man for sure. He
That's funny.
but yeah, and I'm sure the women love him too. But
Well, I mean, okay, so I actually knew that Joe Rogan was a comedian,
yeah,
and then when you mentioned Fear Factor, I'm like, oh, I've heard of that show, but I didn't
yeah,
really know what Joe was all about.
yeah. A year after that conversation, you were on his podcast. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it was great to hear you on there. That episode was awesome.
It was fun. I mean, the thing that's great about Joe is he's such a good conversationalist that the tangents that you go on when you're talking to him, first of all, you're never bored, and
Right.
second of all, he's got, I forget the guy's, his technical guy that he works with,
Jamie Vernon.
who's Jamie. So he's always typing up things on the screen that you can see when you're on. And so you'll talk about something and he'll go, "Brrr," and then it'll be on the screen. Like, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so that it leads to more conversation. And I think we talked for like 2 hours.
He
And
usually
then all of
does
a
like
sudden, like,
3.
I kind of like slipped and like looked at thank God I did. I looked at my cell phone. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta catch a plane. Like,
Yeah, he can keep it interesting for 3 hours. I can't.
yeah.
Like not yet anyway. But
Well, I mean, he talks for a living.
yeah. Well, and he's been on TV hosting, and he's been a comic for how many years? Like, yeah, he's not gonna. He's developed that quick-witted, quick response,
And
articulate. So
his interests are ecumenical. So
yeah,
like he can actually speak intelligently like like an educated layman about a ton of topics.
yeah,
So like if you go into say paleoanthropology, he knows enough to have a conversation
yeah.
about it.
That's a
And
topic I love, and we should talk about that next time you're on. I didn't know you were
sure,
into
we can
that,
do that.
but
It's an
paleo,
area of study I do.
really, because I love
Mhm.
talking about it. There's not a lot of people I know. I could have you on for an hour and a half just about paleoanthropology.
Sure,
Uh,
I could keep that conversation.
yeah, let's do that. Because yeah, I dive into that. Most people have never even heard of it, and so I don't talk about it a lot because people are like, well, what do you like to read? I'm like, paleoanthropology. Makes me sound kind of like a, you know. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. I've got to get out of here. My office needs to be used. But thank you for your time. You've been gracious with it. Thank you for all your knowledge. Thank you for the books you write and the online groups that you manage. You're really out there making a difference. I hope everybody here that has a chance to listen to this follows you online and buys your books and buys T-shirts as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, Planet Earth. Be sure to check out Hank's books, buy them, buy some T-shirts, help support the cause, and cook some delicious meals, some wild game, and above all, be excellent to each other.
Nice Buckaroo Banzai reference.
Nice, nice.
Oh no, that's Bill and Ted. That's Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah.